Dr. Sarah Chen yawned as she stared at the computer screen. It was another late night at the SETI Institute. The search for alien life often felt like looking for a needle in a haystack the size of the universe. But tonight was different. Tonight, everything changed. A strange beeping noise from her console jolted her awake. Sarah's eyes widened as she saw the readings. This wasn't random space noise or a glitch. This was a pattern. A signal. "Holy shit," she whispered, her hands shaking as she reached for her phone. "We found something." Within hours, the quiet SETI facility turned into a buzzing hive of activity. Scientists from around the world connected via video calls, all talking excitedly over each other. Government officials arrived, their faces a mix of excitement and worry. Dr. Chen stood at the front of the room, trying to calm everyone down. "Please, let me explain what we found," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "The signal we received is unlike anything we've seen before. It's not just random pulses. It's a message." The room fell silent. Sarah clicked a button, and a series of strange symbols appeared on the big screen behind her. "We've managed to decode part of it," she continued. It's a distress call." Murmurs filled the room. A distress call. From space. It seemed impossible, yet the evidence was right there in front of them. Sarah cleared her throat. "The message is from a species that calls themselves the Forsaken. They say they need help. Urgently." Dr. Maiko Konkwo, a linguist who had been working nonstop to decode the message, stood up. "There's more," he said, his voice grave. "They claim that every advanced civilization in the universe has abandoned them. We're their last hope." The room exploded with questions. Why were they abandoned? What kind of help did they need? Was this some kind of trap? As the debate raged on, a young scientist named Alex Torres noticed something odd about the signal. "Dr. Chen," he called out, "look at this frequency pattern. It's decaying." Sarah rushed over to Alex's computer. He was right. The signal was getting weaker by the hour. Whatever was happening to the Forsaken, it was getting worse. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., President Evelyn Garcia sat in the Oval Office, listening intently as her advisors argued about what to do. Some wanted to ignore the signal, fearing it could be a trick. Others argued that this could be humanity's greatest moment, a chance to prove ourselves on the galactic stage. The president raised her hand, silencing the room. "What do we know about their technology level?" she asked. The Secretary of Science cleared his throat. "Based on the signal's complexity, they're far more advanced than us, Madam President. But something's clearly gone wrong for them to reach out like this." President Garcia nodded, her face thoughtful. She turned to her military advisor. "And our capabilities. Could we even help if we wanted to?" The general shifted uncomfortably. "We have experimental long-range spacecraft, Madam President. It's a long shot, but we might be able to reach them." As the discussions continued on Earth, billions of miles away, a dying civilization waited. The Forsaken, once a proud and advanced race, now huddled in the ruins of their once great cities. Their technology, once the envy of the galaxy, now flickered and failed around them. An elder Forsaken named Zix looked up at the stars, his 3 eyes blinking slowly. "Do you think they'll come?" he asked his granddaughter, Lumi. Lumi, her skin pale and sickly, shrugged. "Why would they? No one else did." Zix placed a comforting tendril on Lumi's shoulder. "These humans are young. Perhaps they haven't learned to be cruel yet." Back on Earth, the debate raged on. Scientists argued about the risks and possibilities. Politicians worried about the cost and potential dangers. But in living rooms and cafes around the world, ordinary people watched the news with a mix of fear and excitement. In a small town in Kenya, a young girl named Amani looked up at the night sky. "Mom," she asked, "if those aliens need help, shouldn't we try? Isn't that what being human means?" Her mother smiled, hugging her close. "I hope so, sweetie. I really hope so." As the Earth spun on, humanity stood at a crossroads. The choice they would make in the coming days would not only decide the fate of the Forsaken, but perhaps the very soul of humanity itself. The universe watched and waited, wondering if this young species had the courage and compassion to do what no other civilization had done before. The distress signal continued to beep weakly in the background, a constant reminder of the choice that lay ahead. Would humanity rise to the challenge, or would they too abandon the Forsaken to their fate? The world was in chaos. News of the alien distress signal had leaked, and every TV channel, social media platform, and street corner buzzed with debate. Humanity faced its biggest decision ever: help the Forsaken or ignore their plea. In New York, the United Nations building was surrounded by protesters. Some held signs saying, "Help our space brothers," while others warned, "Alien trap. Stay away." Inside, world leaders argued fiercely. The Chinese representative stood up. "This could be a trick," he said, his voice stern. "These aliens might want to lure us out and attack. But what if it's not?" The representative from Brazil countered. "Can we live with ourselves if we let an entire civilization die?" As they debated, Dr. Sarah Chen paced nervously outside the chamber. She had been called to present the scientific facts, but she knew the decision was out of her hands now. Meanwhile, in a small lab in Tokyo, Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka worked tirelessly. He was one of the world's top experts in theoretical space travel. "If we're going to help," he muttered to himself, "we need to figure out how to get there fast." His assistant, Yuki, looked up from her computer. "Dr. Tanaka, I think I found something in the Forsaken signal. It looks like coordinates." Hiroshi's eyes widened. He rushed to Yuki's screen. "My God," he whispered. "They're not just asking for help. They're telling us how to reach them." As scientists made breakthroughs, the public's opinion swayed back and forth. In a small diner in Texas, a group of friends argued over coffee. "It's not our problem," said Mike, a local mechanic. "We've got enough troubles here on Earth." Sarah, a nurse, shook her head. "But Mike, what if it was us sending that signal? Wouldn't we want someone to help?" Their debate was interrupted by the TV behind the counter. "We're getting breaking news," the anchor announced. "President Garcia is about to address the nation." In living rooms, town squares, and on smartphones around the world, people tuned in. President Evelyn Garcia stood behind a podium, her face serious. "My fellow Americans, citizens of Earth," she began, "we face a decision unlike any in human history. The Forsaken have asked for our help. Many fear this could be a trap. Others say it's our duty to assist." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "But I believe the real question is this: who do we want to be? A species that turns its back on those in need, or one that reaches out even across the stars to help others?" As she spoke, the scene shifted to other parts of the world. In a refugee camp in Syria, people crowded around a small radio, listening intently. In the Amazon rainforest, indigenous leaders discussed what this could mean for Earth's future. On the International Space Station, astronauts watched the Earth below, wondering if they might soon venture much farther. President Garcia continued, her voice growing stronger. "I've consulted with leaders around the world. We've heard from scientists, ethicists, and everyday citizens, and we've made our decision." The world held its breath. "We will answer the Forsaken's call. Humanity will reach out to help." The reaction was immediate and intense. Cheers erupted in some places, while protests grew louder in others. But there was no turning back now. In the following days, a global effort began. The best scientists, engineers, and doctors were recruited. Space agencies worldwide started working together like never before. Dr. Sarah Chen found herself leading a team to study the Forsaken's biology from the limited data they had sent. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka's lab became the headquarters for planning the space journey. But challenges quickly arose. How would they communicate with the Forsaken? Could humans even survive on their planet? And most importantly, could they find a way to help before it was too late? As the Earth buzzed with activity, far away, the The Forsaken waited. Zix and his granddaughter Lumi watched their third sun set, its light weaker than ever. "The signal," Lumi said softly. "It's changed." Zix moved his frail body to the communication device. His eyes widened as he read the message. In simple, clear symbols, it said, "We're coming. Hold on." For the first time in years, hope flickered in the Forsaken's dying world. And on Earth, humanity prepared for its greatest journey, not knowing the incredible challenges and discoveries that lay ahead. The decision was made. Now, the real test would begin. The human spaceship Hope emerged from its final jump, its hull gleaming under the light of 3 dying suns. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge, her heart racing as she gazed at the alien world before them. "My God," she whispered, "we made it." The planet of the Forsaken hung in space, a world of purple oceans and green landmasses. But even from orbit, the crew could see signs of decay. Dark patches spread across continents, and the atmosphere shimmered unnaturally. Dr. Mike Okonkwo, the linguist, spoke up. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's them." The bridge fell silent as a scratchy voice filled the air. The words were strange, but thanks to months of study, the crew understood. "Humans, you came. Welcome to our world. Please, hurry." Elena took a deep breath. "All right, team. This is what we've trained for. Let's make first contact." The landing craft descended through swirling clouds. As they broke through, the crew gasped. Below them stretched a vast city, its buildings a mix of incredible architecture and crumbling ruin. Strange plants grew over fallen structures, and in the distance, huge machines lay silent. "It's like they reached the peak of civilization," said Dr. Sarah Chen, and then fell. The craft touched down in a large plaza. As the doors opened, the human team stepped out, their protective suits gleaming. They looked around nervously, unsure what to expect. Suddenly, movement caught their eye. From the shadows of a nearby building, figures emerged. The Forsaken. They were tall, with slender bodies and 3 arms. Their skin shimmered with a faint bioluminescence, and 3 large eyes blinked in what seemed like wonder. But the humans could see the signs of sickness: patchy skin, trembling limbs, and a general air of weakness. One of the Forsaken stepped forward. "I am Zix," it said, its voice translated through the human's earpieces. "Elder of the last city. We feared you wouldn't come." Captain Rodriguez stepped forward, removing her helmet in a gesture of trust. "I'm Captain Elena Rodriguez of Earth. We're here to help." Zix's eyes widened. "You remove your protection. But the sickness. Our scientists believe we're not compatible enough for it to affect us," Elena explained. "We're here to understand and to help, Zix. Can you tell us what happened?" Zix nodded slowly and began to speak. The humans listened in growing horror and sadness as the tale unfolded. The Forsaken had once been a great civilization, masters of technology and art. They had spread across their star system, built incredible wonders, and even began to explore beyond. But then the sickness came. "It started small," Zix said, his voice weak. "A few became ill. Then more. Our greatest minds couldn't find a cure. It affected not just our bodies, but our technology too. As if reality itself was rejecting us." Dr. Chen stepped forward, her medical scanner humming. "May I?" she asked. Zix nodded, and she began to examine him. As Chen worked, Zix continued. "We sent out calls for help. Many races answered at first. They studied us, tried to help. But one by one, they declared us unsavable, a danger. They left us to die." The humans exchanged shocked glances. How could advanced civilizations be so cruel? "The last to abandon us," Zix said, his voice breaking, "told us not to contact anyone else, that we would only bring disaster. But we couldn't just give up. So we sent one last call to the youngest race we knew of. to you." As Zix finished his story, a younger Forsaken approached. "I'm Lumi," she said. "Zix's granddaughter. Is it true? Will you really try to help us?" Elena knelt down to meet Lumi's eyes. "We will do everything in our power," she promised. "Humanity doesn't abandon those in need." As the human team spread out, setting up equipment and beginning their studies, Elena looked around. The once great city of the Forsaken stretched out before her, a mix of incredible technology and creeping decay. The challenge ahead was immense, perhaps impossible. But as she watched her team work, saw the hope in the eyes of the Forsaken, Elena felt a surge of determination. Humanity had come too far to give up now. Whatever it took, they would find a way. The greatest challenge in human history had begun. Days turned into weeks as the human team worked tirelessly to understand the crisis facing the Forsaken. The last city became a hive of activity, with scientists setting up labs in ancient alien structures and medical teams treating the sick in makeshift clinics. Dr. Sarah Chen wiped sweat from her brow as she peered into a microscope. What she saw there still amazed her. The cells of the Forsaken were unlike anything in human biology. They shimmered with an inner light, almost as if they were powered by something more than simple chemistry. "Dr. Chen," called out her assistant, Alex. "You need to see this." Sarah rushed over to Alex's station, where a holographic display showed a simulation of the Forsaken's genetic structure. As she watched, parts of the DNA-like molecule began to glitch. There was no other word for it. Sections would disappear and reappear, or twist into impossible shapes. "It's like their genetic code is corrupted," Alex said, his voice filled with awe and horror. "But how is that even possible?" Before Sarah could answer, an alarm blared through the lab. "Medical emergency in Sector 3. A voice announced over the intercom. Sarah and Alex rushed to the scene, where they found Captain Rodriguez kneeling beside a fallen Forsaken. It was Lumi, Zix's granddaughter. "She just collapsed," Elena said, her voice tight with worry. "And look at her skin." Lumi's normally shimmering skin was dull, with patches that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. Sarah's med scanner beeped urgently as she passed it over the young alien. "It's accelerating," Sarah muttered. "The genetic decay. It's happening faster in the younger generations." As they worked to stabilize Lumi, Dr. Mike Okonkwo burst into the room, his face pale. "We've decrypted more of their historical records," he said. "You're not going to believe this." The team gathered in the central command room, where Mike brought up a holographic display of the Forsaken's history. "Their civilization is millions of years old," he explained. "They had mastered technologies we can barely imagine. But look at this." The display showed a series of experiments the Forsaken had conducted long ago. "They were trying to transcend physical form," Mike continued, "to become beings of pure energy and thought." "My God," Sarah whispered. "They were playing with the fabric of reality itself." Mike nodded grimly. "And something went wrong. They triggered a cascading failure in the basic structure of matter in this region of space. Their bodies, their technology. Everything is slowly unraveling at the quantum level." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just a disease, it was a fundamental breakdown of reality itself. Zix, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "Now you see why the others abandoned us," he said softly. "They feared our fate would spread to them, that we would unravel the universe itself." Captain Rodriguez paced the room, her mind racing. "There has to be a way to stop it," she insisted, "to reverse the damage." "Even if there is," Sarah said, "we're running out of time. At the rate the younger Forsaken are deteriorating, we have maybe a month before their entire species reaches a critical point." As if to emphasize her words, another alarm blared. A voice came over the intercom. "Containment breach in the eastern sector. The decay is spreading to our equipment." The human team rushed to the windows. In the distance, they could see a shimmering wave of nothingness spreading across the landscape. Where it passed, buildings and plants simply ceased to exist. It's not just affecting living things anymore, Sarah said, her voice filled with dread. The breakdown is accelerating. Captain Rodriguez turned to her team, her face set with determination. We didn't come all this way to give up now, she said firmly. Dr. Chen, focus all our resources on understanding this quantum decay. Dr. Okonkwo, dig deeper into their records. There might be a clue to reversing this. She turned to look out the window, watching as more of the alien world flickered and vanished. The rest of us will do what we can to slow the spread and care for the sick. We're the Forsakens' last hope. And maybe the universe's too. As the team dispersed to their tasks, the gravity of their situation sank in. They weren't just fighting to save an alien race anymore. They were in a race against time to prevent the unraveling of reality itself. And the clock was ticking. The situation was growing desperate. As the quantum decay spread, more of the Forsaken fell ill, and larger portions of their world simply vanished. The human team worked around the clock, their determination fueled by a mix of caffeine and sheer willpower. In the main lab, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at her computer screen, her eyes red from lack of sleep. Dozens of simulations ran simultaneously, each one trying to model the strange behavior of the Forsaken's deteriorating DNA. It's like trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces keep changing shape, she muttered. Nearby, Alex was tinkering with a strange device. It looked like a cross between a microscope and a particle accelerator. If we can't study their DNA in our reality, he explained, maybe we need to look at it from outside. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Outside reality. Alex, that's crazy, I know, he finished. But so is everything else about this situation. As they worked, Captain Elena Rodriguez entered the lab, looking grim. We just lost another section of the city, she reported. Whatever you're doing, do it faster. Suddenly, an excited shout came from across the room. It was Dr. Mike Okonkwo, waving a tablet. I found something, he exclaimed. In the Forsaken's oldest records, it's not much, but it might be a clue. The team gathered around as Mike explained. The Forsaken's ancestors didn't just try to transcend physical form, he said. They were trying to access something they called the substratum, a layer of reality underlying our own. Sarah's eyes widened. That fits with what we're seeing, she said. It's as if their matter is falling through the cracks in our reality. But look at this, Mike continued, pointing to a complex diagram. They had theories about stabilizing the connection between our reality and this substratum. Alex leaned in, his face lighting up with an idea. What if, he began, what if we're not trying to cure a disease at all? What if we need to patch reality itself? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. It seemed impossible, and yet. Okay, Elena said, taking charge. Let's approach this like any engineering problem. We need to understand the substratum, find a way to access it, and then figure out how to use it to stabilize the Forsaken's reality. The team sprang into action. Sarah and Alex focused on modifying their equipment to detect and measure the substratum. Mike worked with the Forsaken to understand more about their ancestors' research. Elena coordinated with the rest of the human crew to slow the spread of the decay. Days passed in a blur of experiments, setbacks, and small breakthroughs. The team barely slept, driven by the knowledge that with each passing hour, more of the Forsaken and their world slipped away. Finally, after a week of non-stop work, they had a breakthrough. We've done it, Alex shouted, his face glowing with excitement. We've managed to create a stable interface with the substratum. The device he and Sarah had built hummed with power, projecting a shimmering field that seemed to bend the light around it. Great work, Elena said. But how do we use it to help the Forsaken? Sarah stepped forward, her face serious. We have a theory, she said. If we can project this field around a Forsaken, it might stabilize their quantum structure. But what? Elena asked. We don't know what it will do to them, Sarah admitted, or to whoever operates the device. We're talking about interacting with the fundamental nature of reality. The risks are significant. Elena nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. We need a volunteer, she said, both from us and the Forsaken. Before anyone could speak, Zix entered the lab, supported by his granddaughter Lumi. Both looked weaker than ever, their forms flickering like bad holograms. We overheard, Zix said, his voice barely a whisper. I will volunteer. Grandfather, no, Lumu protested. Zix turned to her, his 3 eyes filled with love. My child, I have lived a long life. If there's a chance to save our people, to save you, I must take it. Belina looked at her team. And from our side. To everyone's surprise, it was Mike who stepped forward. I'll do it, he said. I've spent my life trying to understand other cultures, other ways of thinking. Maybe that will help when dealing with whatever this is. The next few hours were a flurry of preparation. The team modified their device, setting it up in a contained area. Zix was positioned in the center, with Mike at the controls. As the rest of the team watched from behind a protective barrier, Mike took a deep breath and activated the device. The air around Zix shimmered and warped. The old Forsaken gasped, his body lifting slightly off the ground. Mike gritted his teeth, his hands shaking as he manipulated controls that seemed to bend in impossible ways. For a moment, it seemed to be working. Zix's form stabilized, the flickering stopping. Then suddenly, everything went wrong. The shimmering field expanded explosively, engulfing both Zix and Mike. There was a flash of light that seemed to bend around corners, a sound that tasted like color. And then silence. As the team's eyes readjusted, they saw Mike and Zix standing in the center of the room. But they were changed. Their forms flickered between solid and ethereal, as if they existed in multiple realities at once. Mike turned to the team, his eyes glowing with an inner light. When he spoke, his voice echoed as if from far away. We understand now. We know how to save them. The room was silent, all eyes fixed on Mike and Zix. Their forms shimmered, seeming to exist in multiple realities at once. It was beautiful and terrifying. Mike, Elena asked cautiously, are you okay? Mike turned to her, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. We are more than okay, Elena. We are everything. Dr. Sarah Chen stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. What happened? What did you see? Mike and Zix spoke in unison, their voices overlapping in a strange harmony. We have seen the substratum. We have become part of it. And now we know how to save the Forsaken. They explained, their words painting pictures in the minds of the listeners. The substratum wasn't just another layer of reality. It was the foundation of all realities. The Forsaken's ancestors had accidentally thinned the barrier between their world and the substratum, causing their reality to slowly fall apart. But we can fix it, Mike/Zix said. We can teach the Forsaken to exist in both realities at once, stabilizing them. Elena frowned. But won't that change them? Is that what they want? Zix's 3 eyes blinked, a touch of his old self showing through. It is not just what we want, Captain. It is what we were always meant to be. Our ancestors' mistake was not in seeking transcendence, but in trying to leave our physical forms behind entirely. The team spent the next few hours in intense discussion, planning their next move. The solution was clear, but the implementation would be challenging. They would need to expose each of the Forsaken to the substratum, teaching them to exist in both realities. It's risky, Sarah warned. We don't know how different individuals will react. We have no choice, Elena decided. It's this or watch them, and their world disappear completely. The next days were a blur of activity. The team set up multiple stations around the city, each equipped with a modified version of the device that had transformed Mike and Zix. The Forsaken came in groups, nervous but hopeful. Lumi was one of the first volunteers after Zix. As she stepped into the shimmering field, Her grandfather took her hand. "Don't be afraid," he said softly. "Embrace it." For a moment, Lumi's form wavered, seeming to split into multiple versions of herself. Then, with a gasp, she stabilized, her body glowing with the same inner light as Mike and Zix. "I can feel it," she whispered in awe. "The universe, it's so beautiful." One by one, the Forsaken underwent the transformation. It wasn't always smooth. Some struggled, their forms flickering dangerously before stabilizing. But with Mike and Zix's guidance, each one eventually succeeded. As more of the Forsaken changed, something incredible began to happen. The areas of their world that had vanished began to reappear, solidifying as the Forsaken's new dual reality nature stabilized their surroundings. Elena watched in amazement as a fallen tower reassembled itself, its shimmering form more beautiful than before. "It's working," she breathed. "We're actually doing it." But the process was taking its toll on the human team. The constant exposure to the energies of the substratum was affecting them. Some reported strange dreams, others found themselves occasionally phasing out of reality. "We need to finish this quickly," Sarah warned, "or we might end up changed as well." As the last group of Forsaken prepared for transformation, a new crisis arose. The substratum energies had built up to dangerous levels, threatening to tear open the barrier between realities permanently. "If that happens, both our worlds could be destroyed," Mike/Zix warned. Elena made a quick decision. "We need to seal the breach." "How do we do it?" Mike and Zix exchanged a look. "We can do it," they said. "But we'll have to go deep into the substratum. We might not come back." Elena wanted to argue, to find another way. But she knew there was no time. "Do it," she said, her voice thick with emotion. As the last of the Forsaken completed their transformation, Mike and Zix moved to the center of the city. Their forms began to glow brighter and brighter, pulsing with energy. "Thank you," Zix said, looking at the human team. "For believing in us when no one else would." Mike smiled at his friends. "Keep exploring," he said. "The universe is more wonderful than we ever imagined." With a final pulse of light, Mike and Zix vanished. The air shimmered for a moment, and then everything went still. The breach was sealed. Elena looked around at the transformed city, at the Forsaken glowing with their new dual reality nature. They had done it. They had saved an entire civilization. As the human team prepared to return home, Lumi approached them. "You've given us a new future," she said. "We'll never forget this." Elena smiled, feeling both triumph and loss. "Neither will we," she said softly. "Neither will we." 5 years had passed since the human mission to save the Forsaken. Earth had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The return of the Hope spacecraft had brought not just tales of heroism, but a fundamental shift in humanity's understanding of the universe. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at a podium in New York, addressing the United Nations. Behind her, a holographic display showed images of Earth's first embassy on the Forsaken's world. "The alliance between humanity and the Forsaken has opened doors we never knew existed," Sarah explained. "Their understanding of the substratum has revolutionized our science, our technology, and our very concept of reality." In the audience, Captain Elena Rodriguez, now Admiral Rodriguez, nodded in agreement. The past 5 years had been a whirlwind of diplomatic missions, scientific breakthroughs, and cultural exchanges. As Sarah continued her presentation, the scene shifted to the Forsaken's homeworld. The once dying planet now pulsed with life and energy. Cities shimmered between realities, beautiful structures that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Lumi, now a leader among her people, guided a group of human scientists through a garden where plants grew in impossible shapes, existing in multiple states at once. "We've learned to cultivate life that thrives in both our reality and the substratum," Lumi explained. "These plants can grow food that nourishes both body and mind." One of the scientists, a young woman named Amani, reached out to touch a flower. Her hand passed through it, leaving a trail of shimmering energy. It's incredible, she breathed. Back on Earth, in a lab deep beneath the Swiss Alps, a team of human and Forsaken scientists worked on a new project. They were building a device that could open controlled gateways to the substratum, allowing for near-instantaneous travel across vast distances. If this works, one of the human scientists said, we could reach the farthest corners of our galaxy in the blink of an eye. His Forsaken colleague nodded, her three eyes blinking in sequence. And perhaps beyond, she added. The substratum connects all realities. In time, we may explore not just this universe, but others. The potential was both exciting and terrifying. Some on Earth feared that humanity was moving too fast, delving into forces they didn't fully understand. But for every voice of caution, there were many more eager to embrace this new frontier. In orbit around Earth, a new type of space station was under construction. It was a joint project between humans and the Forsaken, designed to be a hub for interstellar diplomacy. Ships from a dozen alien races were scheduled to arrive for its inauguration. Admiral Rodriguez floated in zero gravity, overseeing the final preparations. To think, she mused to her aide, just a few years ago, we thought we were alone in the universe. Now we're hosting a galactic summit. Her aide, a young lieutenant, looked out at the stars. Do you ever wonder about Mike and Zix? He asked. If they're still out there somewhere. Alina's face softened. Every day, she said quietly. But wherever they are, I hope they know what their sacrifice made possible. As if in answer to her words, a shimmering distortion appeared in space near the station. Alarms blared, but Alina raised a hand, somehow knowing there was no danger. A form emerged from the distortion. Not quite solid, not quite energy. It took a moment for Alina to recognize the merged beings of Mike and Zix. Hello, old friends, they said, their voice echoing strangely. We felt it was time for a visit. Tears formed in Alina's eyes, floating away in small globules. You're alive. But how? Where have you been? Mike/Zix smiled, their form rippling. We've been everywhere and everyone. The substratum is more vast and wonderful than we ever imagined, and we've discovered something incredible. They gestured, and suddenly the viewport was filled with a vision of unimaginable scope. Countless universes, all connected by threads of substratum energy. We are not alone, Mike/Zix said. There are other realities, other forms of life, beyond anything we've encountered, and they're reaching out, just as we are. As Alina and her crew stared in awe, Mike/Zix continued. The alliance between humans and Forsaken was just the beginning. Now it's time for something greater, a cosmic alliance of realities. The vision faded, leaving the humans stunned and exhilarated. Alina looked at Mike/Zix, her mind reeling with possibilities. Well, she said, a smile spreading across her face, I guess we better prepare a welcome party. Humanity's greatest adventure is just beginning. As news of Mike and Zix's return spread across Earth and the Forsaken's world, a wave of excitement and hope swept through both civilizations. The universe, it seemed, was bigger, stranger, and more wonderful than anyone had ever dreamed. And humanity, once a young race on a small blue planet, was ready to take its place among the stars and beyond.